Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Lewis, and I am an integrative nutrition health coach and also transformation coach. And thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time joining my channel or visiting my channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome. And today I'm honored to have the lovely Charise Worthy with us. And Charise is honoring a topic that's so incredibly important right now, among so many others, as we are starting to actually exit a stay-at-home order in our state here in Michigan. Nonetheless, a lot of people are still sticking and staying close to home. And as people are close to home and they're sheltered in place with family members, some family situations are not so safe. So today we're talking about domestic violence and what to do if a woman is sheltered in place with her offender. And let me just say, we at Mind, Body, and Soul, Erica Lewis, Mind, Body, and Soul, do know and understand that domestic violence can also cause men to be a victim. At this time, with Charise's experience, obviously she happens to be a woman, and her experience is coming to us today from a woman's perspective. So we want to be very aware and conscious of the fact that not just women are affected by this scenario. We also know, so sadly, children are affected as well. But again, we're focusing on women today. Welcome, Charise.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I do want to say about you, Charise is a powerful soul. She has so much to offer, and I'm delighted that she actually is coming on board as a mind, body, and soul coach that will be available and is available for any women who are ready to do the work with her. And I don't want to give away her story or her information she'll share with you, but she has certifications and background as a life coach. She also has wonderful life experience. She is just a divine soul with so much to offer. And so really, I'm blessed to be in her acquaintance. Like I said, if at the end of this time you decide that Charise is a personality that you feel that you want more of, which a lot of people do, we will let you know how she can be accessible to you. Again, Charise, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And so again, I have my notes here because I like to try and stay on track. So I have before me some of the things that I was curious to find out about your story. Your story is powerful. Unfortunately, your story is very, very common. And I've heard the statistic that since the stay-at-home has been in place, I believe it was Michigan. Forgive me if my statistic is off. I've been trying to find out if this was state-specific or nationwide specific, but I've heard that incidences of domestic violence are up approximately 25%. One is too many. Women have lost their lives. Women are severely stressed. Families are stressed. Can you, first of all, just define domestic violence for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So domestic violence is an ongoing pattern of isolation, intimidation, and control. And that's what it's really about. And obviously, it's going to impact or affect the victim or children as well in a physical, economic, and even their emotional well-being. And so, and we say domestic violence, they're also beginning to use intimate partner violence as well. But what I do want to point out, because a lot of times when people hear domestic violence, they always think of the physical. Yes, that's one way that it shows up, but it could also be, again, financial, emotional, psychological, even sexual. They have to deal with that. And even from my experience, it wasn't just one thing that happened. It was a collective of a combination of these things.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine. So what a lot of people like to think and say when they hear of someone being in a domestic violence situation is, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? Can you clarify reasons why a victim may not leave?
Yeah, so we want to definitely pivot that question because that's victim blaming. And the victim isn't at fault for what? Loving someone, wanting to be in a caring and nurturing relationship. So we want to pivot that question. Why do abusers abuse?
Wow.
But just to clarify, a victim or someone in that situation may not leave. I didn't immediately leave from my situation. First and foremost, it's a matter of safety. people may not realize it, but a lot of the fatalities that may happen with domestic violence or intimate partner violence is when a person leaves and the perpetrator comes to them and takes their life away from them. You know, so it's a risk on their part to be able to leave. We want to make sure that they're able to leave safely and not have to end up being a statistic of they're no longer here to share their story, if they choose to share their story. But even from my experience, like I said, I didn't immediately leave. You know, we've heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It isn't post for them. They're in the midst of the trauma. So if people are struggling after the fact with the trauma, can you imagine being in the midst of it? You know, so how do I get out of here safely? Can I get out of here safely? And it doesn't necessarily mean because you're in that situation that your feelings are automatically depleted. Everything is a process. You know, us human beings, we're complicated. You know, so it isn't just as cut and dry as them being able to get out. We want them to be able to get out safely, and it is their decision. And again, they're in the midst of trauma. That's a lot to process.
Wow. They're in the midst of trauma. I don't think I've heard that before, and I don't think a lot of people look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like almost like they're in survival mode mentally and physically.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Now, and I'm just, you know, imagining now during COVID-19, like even though, like I said, we're in the state of Michigan here for our subscribers who are abroad or, you know, in different states, everyone is opening up at their own time. Even still, a lot of places are still closed to the public. So, you know, I'm just imagining trying to, you know, how one can navigate through domestic violence during COVID-19 where there's no escape or there's no, you know, nowhere to go, you know, to get reprieve or maybe even to get that help that you need. So how does one navigate during times like COVID-19?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to assure anyone who's going through this that resources are still available. So no, like, you know, here in the area where I live in Macomb County, Turning Point is the organization that I know that works with the domestic violence victims, survivors, as well as sexual assault. So no, you can't literally go to their office, but they still have a 24-hour hotline. Their counselors are still available to talk with individuals who need counseling or need to talk through anything. They are still available for those, if you don't have a safety plan and you don't know where to begin with that, they can walk you through that process. So the resources are still available. And actually, you know, to your statistic, 25%, you know, I was looking at something where it was saying that these resources where they do get the phone calls, they're seeing an uptick of upward to 30%. You know, and one lady I was listening to, someone who called in to share her story, was this person was never violent towards them before. And so maybe that person was in a situation where they were able to turn things on and off because we were able to break away. But now they're in this confined space. And, you know, even from my experience, I saw a totally different side living with this person than what I knew before. But when you live with somebody, particularly 24/7, you can't turn on and off who you truly are.
That's true. That's true. The mask comes off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I definitely want to say there's resources available, and I'll provide a resource or two at the end, but also talk to your family and friends. You know, even if you're not sharing particularly what you're going through, because it's not easy, you know, but just to still try to have some, you know, and I'm reluctant to say this, some type of normalcy, you know. So if it's talking to your best girlfriend or your sister friend, your family, your mom, if you're able to have those conversations where you're just able to break away for a moment and just disconnect, and do that, still try to keep those connections if at all possible.
You've alluded to your story, Charise. Can you share story with us as detailed as you feel comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got married in January 2011, and it was to my son's father. So it's not someone that I had just met. We shared the son together, but we definitely disconnected at that point and went our separate ways and came back together. So we got married in January 2011. May 2011 was my first occurrence of being physically attacked by him. And and to me, it's not important. We were having a discussion, in relationships, we're two different individuals. So my expectation is not that we agree on everything. So I don't know what the dispute, debate, whatever you want to label it as, what it was. But what I did realize is that in the midst of it, we weren't getting anywhere. It was just back and forth, back and forth. So I decided that, recognizing that, I decided, okay, I'm going to leave this because we're not getting anywhere. So I basically just said that I was done, and I went on to get started with my day. So while I'm taking a shower, he comes in and pulls the shower curtain back. And, again, I'm trying to de-escalate, and he's hell-bent on escalating. So he pulled the shower curtain back and, began to ask me, so because you say it's over, it's over. No, that's not my intent. We just weren't getting anywhere. So like, he's basically in a rage. And so in the midst of that, he slaps me. And so I'm not expecting that. I have never seen that side of him. So I wasn't expecting that, but I'm in my most vulnerable state. I'm in the shower. I'm not clothed. I'm wet. I'm soaking wet. So there was really nothing I could do. So I'm just really just there processing it. And even in the midst of that, he begins to take his belt off. And so at that point, it really was just fear for me at that point. So I didn't end up getting hit with the belt, but still the fact that this person, who I've just 5 months ago taken these vows with, that you just got that ugly with me and you claim to love me. And that really wasn't it. It was just, so that was one occurrence. Another time that month, another debate. I'm asleep. He wakes me up out of my sleep, and that night he's strangling me. In our community, we're very, some people say choke. And so we teach that choking is internal. That's something that happens like if you're eating a piece of popcorn or something and it gets stuck in your throat. Strangulation is an outside force. So he had me pinned down and he was strangling me. And I kid you not, like, I did not know if I was going to survive or not. But I also had an experience of where I was held hostage, literally, for a whole day. So then just being able to get out of there that day. And so, like I said, it's a process trying to leave these situations. We think about the statistics. 1 in 4 women are going to experience domestic violence or intimate partner violence. And that's what's reported. I never called. I never reported mine. So I believe that number is much higher than what's reported. And I never called because just for what I was experiencing, and each abuser is different. It wasn't every day, but it was traumatic enough and left me in a place of fear enough. I wasn't even confident that I, 1, could get to my phone, 2, could call the police, and 3, they would get there in time. It's the dynamic I was dealing with. And so that's why we go back to the point of, we definitely want to pivot that question of why doesn't the victim leave? There's a lot of stuff at risk there. And there's a lot of stuff you're trying to process within the moment.
Within the moment.
Within the moment.
I'm still stuck on the fact that you say, they're in the midst of trauma. It seems so common sense that others would see it that way, but to hear you say it, it's like they're living this thing. They're trying to cope, survive, and possibly think of a future.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. And, I don't think, some people can be insulting with it. Some people are well-intentioned, we just know as coaches, we kind of stay away from the question of why, because it is finger pointing.
Exactly.
It is finger pointing. And so The one why question you don't want to ask. You know, we can still come from a place of love and support, but there's ways to do that. And I do want to point out, when I'm seeing that, you know, someone who's in these situations can make use of these resources, you as a friend or a family member who knows someone who's dealing with this and you don't know how to navigate it, guess what? You too can make use of these resources. A lot of these organizations are nonprofit. When it comes to their 24-hour hotlines, whoever calls, they receive prank calls, and they still have a standard to how they have to handle those calls. They don't hang up on you. So if you as a person on the outside looking in per se, has a question or want to know how to navigate that or help your friend or family member, make use of those resources. You know, in addition to providing the resources, what I like, part of volunteering with the organization that I volunteer with, and all the organizations do this, they really work to educate, not even the community, not just the community, everyone. So we go into middle schools, high schools, we're talking to the young kids, because believe it or not, they have to deal with that as well. Whether it's domestic violence or intimate partner violence or sexual assault, they're exposed to that. Our kids, our children are not in the bubble. You know, and for me at first, I was kind of like, wow, really? But as I thought back, I knew someone who was murdered by her boyfriend when I was in high school. You know, so we began to educate, you know, what does a healthy relationship look like? What does an unhealthy relationship look like? What does an abusive relationship look like? You know, these are, you know, subject matters we may shun away from, but obviously we need to have them when we're talking about 1 in 4 women. And I believe the statistic is 1 in 7 men. So it's happening. And again, this is only what's reported. So this is very prevalent, very widespread. You know, and another thing to note, when we're talking about domestic violence, is one thing I know for sure about it is non-discriminatory. It doesn't care your income bracket, doesn't care about your color, your sexual orientation, your age, your religion. It happens across every range. So we can't even, some people erroneously may say, oh, that's something that happens to poor people. No. When I was looking at a statistic, as far as the salary range, maybe someone maybe making $25,000 may have had the highest amount, but the next 2 highest category was above $50,000. So it's not a poor thing.
And you're doing such a great job educating us and just covering all grounds, all bases, and all questions that that someone may have, or even things that we've never thought about. I'm just sitting here in awe, just imagining, you know, what one could be going through.
Absolutely. And even for me, someone who went through it, working with the organization that I work with, that's where I got my education from. You know, when we're talking about domestic violence, for me, yeah, I checked that mark because I was physically attacked. I was physically hit. I was strangled. That's physical. And then to look at it and see that, oh, it wasn't just the physical, it was sexual. And when we say sexual assault, some people make this, oh, well, if you're married, you still have the power of yay or nay. It's still my choice. But even beyond that, someone, he knew I didn't want to have kids, wouldn't wear a condom. So I had to be conscious of that. You know, like, were you trying to get me pregnant, even though you know? So that's a way, again, that they're using their power, right? The financial. So if you're depending on him financially, he gets to use that against you. You know, maybe giving you money for just the essentials, or maybe he threatens to withhold. In my situation, I was more so the breadwinner. So I would get threatened with that he would quit his job. Didn't mean anything to me at the time, because at that point, I've been accustomed to taking care of me and my son. So we were going to have a roof. We were going to eat. But it is a stressor when you got another body in the house, you know what I mean? Who's not pulling their weight. So that becomes a financial stressor. So again, it's not always just physical. Sometimes it's accumulation of things. Yeah, and they're very manipulative, and they know very well what they're doing.
Oh, mm. And I know before you mentioned self-care when we talked about this, how important is self-care, or can you even have self-care when you're going through such a hell on earth type situation at home?
Yeah, so and here's the thing with self-care. So it's not going to be the luxury spa when you're thinking of
Mhm.
self-care. It's not going to be that type of experience. It may be something as breath work.
Mm.
Maybe you just take a deep breath in and exhale it out. Exhale it out. Maybe that's a way of self-care. If you're able to have a moment where you can have a bath. So it's going to be very minute. It's going to be very little, but if you can carve it out, and again, I know in the midst of it, that's not really what we're thinking about. So this is just something that I just want to throw out there for people to think about. Again, I know that it's hard, and again, it's not going to be about that luxury spa parent experience, but it's just really about moments that you can do, perhaps journaling. So that's something that I was able to do in the midst of mine. I didn't necessarily, and you come to know your abuser. So I was never worried about him going through a notebook or reading anything. So for me, the way I was able to release was I was able to journal about it. Just to be able to, that was my release for me. Even though I was still in it, I couldn't keep all that in, and at that point I wasn't immediately vocal about what was going on. So for me, it was in the form of a journal.
Hmm. And you mentioned your son, and I'm just envisioning, I'm a mom of two. So for a woman, or two girls, no less. So as a woman who is raising children in the midst of all this going on in the house, how does a mother communicate what's happening to her children? I've heard many stories where the children become the protectors, or, they try and jump in, or they get scared and they hide. How can a mother protect her children in the midst of this? What's the communication like to your child as they're witnessing some of these, heinous acts? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I would say for me and my experiences, for the ones that occurred, my son was not home. um you know but so in the midst of it, I don't know that I had a conversation with them, and it was more after the fact. But even for the parents whose children are at home, and even though I say my son wasn't at home, don't be dismissive of kids and their awareness, and when they know if something's right and when something's off. So again, even if you don't have these discussions, again, go to these resources. These nonprofit organizations, this is what they do. This is what they specialize in. If their goal is to eradicate domestic violence and sexual assault, and they are there for the victims and their families. So even if you as a parent are in that and don't know how to navigate that discussion with your children, or maybe you're just too raw and vulnerable to have that discussion, seek these resources. Because guess what? They have counselors that would talk with children as well.
Really?
Yes.
What are these resources? It's time. And two, for our viewers, we're going to put these, they'll be in the notes so that you have them in the description. But just give us some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I'm going to give you is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I give that because, I work with my organization here. And I will say this, even though I'm in Michigan, Macomb County, if you call from another state, they're still going to be of service to you. They're not going to say you're not in this area. We can't. As a matter of fact, they lean on each other, particularly for those that seeking shelter. Like if they're full, they'll make the call to other organizations to see if they have beds available for a victim or a victim and their family. Because a lot of times, it's probably not just the mom. She, in more cases than not, she probably has children as well. So the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So online, their web address is thehotline.org. And typically when you go to their sites, because just again, depending on your abuser, they could be monitoring your internet access. Most of them will ask, are you safe? Is this being monitored? They'll ask, you'll get a pop-up as much as that. They have a chat available. They have a phone number as well, and their phone number is 1-800-799-7233. So again, you go online, thehotline.org. You could check out to see what the information that they have. There's a chat available. You could give them a call. You could also text them, and you would text "Love Is" to 22522. So again, you're going to text 22522, and when you text, you're going to type in "Love Is," and you can have a communication with a counselor through that way as well. So another resource, if you're checking in internationally, is UN Women, and that their website is unwomen.org. So that's another great website. So the organization that I work with is Turning Point Macomb, and during COVID right now, they have a lot of online things going on, and they actually just released their summer communication education. So this is open to anyone who wants to learn more. And so again, this is what I love about these organizations. Yes, they are there to be a resource and offer help to survivors and victims, but they're also there to educate. So some of the things that's coming up is, what is domestic violence? What is sexual assault? What is consent? So they have some pretty dynamic and powerhouse programs that's coming up. And again, because of COVID, they're doing it via Zoom. But to me as well, I think we get to further expand our reach for people who, because I work with the volunteer table sometimes, and sometimes I definitely get people who shun away. It's like, oh no, I would never be in a domestic violence situation. You just never know. Never thought I would be in one, but here I am. Or some people, they may just shun away from it. And so sometimes, and you just learn working through it. So sometimes I tell people, hey, it may not be you, but it may be someone that you know.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get educated about, domestic violence and sexual assault. So if you do encounter someone who goes through this, you'll know how to be a support, how to be an advocate for that person, and not be the victim blamer, even if that's not your intent. There's a proper way to handle this.
Yes. Because even out of love, I'm trying to think, back to a scenario where I had with a girlfriend in college, and I probably said all the wrong things at that time. You're too beautiful, you're too smart. Why would you be going through this? And, yeah, and you can have the best intentions ever. So that's great. Thank you for those resources. That's so important. And as I said before, if I were fancier, I'd have all those resources flashing across the screen and everything. So I'm not there yet to my subscribers, but as I said, they will definitely be in the description for you. And I'm just hoping that women take advantage of them during this time and beyond for any time that they need to. Again, as I said, Charise Worthy, one of our Mind, Body, Soul coaches, a phenomenal resource. And her specialty is just this, is walking women through, a point of travis, of hardship, a point of maybe even hopelessness, and showing you how to find a light in life after domestic violence. So please, reach out and I can connect you with Charise. Feel free to leave anything in the comments that you would like us to see, myself or Charise. And Charise, why don't you just, I guess, close us out? If you could, look into the camera and talk to that woman that's hurting right now, or that woman that needs support, or that's just so scared, shook, and unsure, that feels so worthless. What would you say to her?
That you are definitely worthy. What you are going through are not a result of something that you did or did not do. That all lies in the hands of the abuser. Only thing you did was open your heart to love, and you are worthy of that. And you are worthy of a journey of healing. And I too had to personally go through that. So being the human that you are, go through what you need to go through. every emotion. And I know that it's not easy always getting out. Just seek those resources, do that safety plan. Because safety planning isn't always about a safety plan to get you out, but how can you safely be safe in the environment that you are in. And I know you probably think, well, it doesn't matter what I do. If he says go right and I go right, and he meant left, I was supposed to know that. Like, I know that. I know that. But these organizations, they know how to work with you to get through that. And when you feel it's time for you to move forward, you'll know when it's time. But don't second guess yourself. Don't doubt that you don't deserve love, because you definitely do. A lot of times, we that who are in this situation, we are love and light. And I want you to continue to be love and light. And I'm not going to kid you. When you leave, it's still more work, because I had to do that. Like, for me, bitterness was beginning to take root. And so I'll tell you what began my turning point. I definitely recognized that I was not in a good space. So I literally had to ask myself, I'm like, Charise, do you want to be bitter, or do you want to be better? And so when you're ready to be better, you'll be there, and it's on your terms, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Again, you are love and light. If you need me, I am here for you. Love and light to you.
Thank you, Charise. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today. Again, if you're interested in connecting with Charise to begin your journey and get the support and everything that you need, again, she is our coach that specializes in just this type of care and is just this type of life coaching. So you can reach out and connect, as I said in the comments, and also by going to Erica Lewis, mindbodysoul.com. Again, ERICA, Erica Lewis, mindbodysoul.com. And connect with us on the social medias. As I said, you can request Charise, and I can help you along that path to connecting with her. So love and light to everyone during this time and beyond. We will get through it together. And if you ever have any other suggestions that you would like to see on this channel, anything mind, body, and soul uplifting, please do reach out. I'm here for you. And take very good care. Thank you, Charise, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me and this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.